Hello, and welcome to Blythe Coffee Break, the podcast where queer culture, pop chaos, mythology, and a very strong cup of tea all meet at the same table. I'm Jemma Blythe, your resident cultural overthinker, media romantic, and professional noticer of things that are definitely not that deep until they absolutely are. Each episode will spill the hottest queer headlines, unpack the stories shaping how we love, live, and see ourselves on screen. And because we're nothing if not a little dramatic, trace those moments back to the myths and archetypes we've been rewriting for centuries. Think of this as your midweek catch-up with a friend who reads too much into TV storylines, quotes folklore at inappropriate times, and believes that queer media isn't just entertainment, it's cultural history in real time. So, grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's take a nice little coffee break, the Blythe way. Hello and welcome back to Blythe Coffee Break, Season 2, Episode 3. I can't believe we're at Episode 3. And today is such an exciting topic because we are delving into queer friendships and how very often queer families are chosen as part of the PODCASTHON and representing the charity Out Together. And we'll have more on that later on in the podcast. I am super excited for today's ep. It's going to be so good. But we wouldn't be starting properly if we didn't have a coffee order from a friend of the podcast. And today we have a coffee order from at DebBlythe01 on Instagram, and she has a hot Americano with oat milk. So I will leave that up on the screen. Go give her a follow and wave a hi and tell her that you came from the coffee break. So this week's hot sip. Now we've all got our coffees and got settled, I understand. So this is something that I have been noticing a lot in queer media lately. And I have been loving queer media lately. I've been going through the archives on iPlayer, Channel 4, Channel 5, ITV, you name it. I'm going through the archives. And for years, queer media was focused in London, or a big city like Glasgow if we're talking about lip service. But every storyline, every drama, every nightlife documentary, it seemed to be London. Am I right? Not everybody can get to London. London is not accessible for everybody up and down the country. Especially, train prices. Hello, ridiculous. But lately, something's shifted, especially when I've been watching programs that are from like 2024. Things shifted a couple of years ago. More queer communities are starting to take center stage, which, of course, I can't go past this without referencing the Smoggy Queens, which is on BBC iPlayer for those in the UK, which shows characters like Dickie, Mam, Stuart, Lucinda, and Sal. And it's a chosen family of queer friends living in Middlesbrough, and it highlights queer life in Middlesbrough. So again, you're getting more of the mundanity of everyday life and the drama that comes with it. It's a sitcom that I've actually been able to laugh at and enjoy, which that's not a normal thing these days. Normally, I struggle to find a decent sitcom to laugh at. And I think one of the reasons why Smoggy Queens is so relatable is that it navigates the challenges of life, love, loss, and a sense of community. And as well as, like we touched on earlier on, it expands representation outside of metropolitan areas, specifically London. So it's nice to see a sitcom which shows all of that, but it's not based in London. And as well, it shows reality for most queer people, not just the glamorous side, not just the drag side, but the in-between bits as well. That again, behind closed doors, and you get dramas and TV shows that didn't used to show that. We touched on that last week in soap operas. Now you get a full story arc from marriage. And then all of the little in-between bits, fighting over bins and what goes in what bin, who's going to make the coffee, who's going to make breakfast. You get all of that now. And it's nice that that's shown in Smoggy Queens as well. So if you haven't checked that out, please do, as I challenge any one of you not to enjoy it. You really will. So that's this week's hot sip. Now we move on to the deep brew. And for this one, it's time to cover what queer community looks like outside major cities. And very often, the thing that annoys me the most is that when people think of queer life, they very often think of the nightlife, not the everyday mundanity life. They think of clubs, pride, big city scenes, woo! And it's not like that. For many LGBTQ plus people, especially the ones of the older generation, the ones that have passed the baton down for years to future generations, community looks very different for them. And with that, I need to mention Out Together, because they do all that they can, and I mean all that they can, to support LGBTQ plus people in Yorkshire. So I'm not talking about London here. I'm talking about Yorkshire. And I feel a little bit out of place because I'm not drinking Yorkshire tea. I am, of course, drinking coffee, but I'm sure they'll forgive me. And they focus on reducing isolation and building community. I'm talking digital inclusivity sessions, which is just amazing to get people of different ages talking about how they struggle sometimes with digital access with other people in a community which they feel welcome to. Then they do community lunches as well. I know that they have one at Prezzo coming up, it's amazing. Honestly, so good. And then they have coffee, cake, and chat sessions as well. And I will leave details up of this on the screen because it's so amazing the work that they do and the work that they put in to make sure that loneliness is reduced in older queer people. And we'll get on to statistics and all that good stuff later on, because I think that's equally important to touch on when we're talking about communities and chosen families and queer life. And then you've got intergenerational connections between younger and older LGBTQ plus people. Very often, I find listening to older LGBTQ plus people one of the best experiences ever, because they've lived through hard times. Some of them have lived through fighting for our rights and the AIDS pandemic and things like that. And then you get like the mischievous side with the drag queens, and there's just something so special about listening to older LGBTQ plus people that have lived. And when I say lived, I mean really lived. Yeah, it's an honor and a privilege being in their presence. So, and I'm talking about mischief when it comes to theatre and shows and things like that as well, of course. I mean, it wouldn't be the LGBTQ plus community without mischief. And of course, something that Out Together do really well is that they encourage different activities, as I've already mentioned, with the lunches and the tea, coffee and chat sessions and the digital inclusivity sessions. All of that encourages people to befriend other people and find their own chosen families within these spaces, all thanks to Out Together. I will leave Out Together's details within the description of this podcast, and I will also leave a donation link to them as well, because I wish that there were more of Out Together in this country. I really do. So, why regional groups matter? And they matter simply because there's still isolation in rural communities. In a survey and research that Just Like Us, another LGBT charity, conducted, they found that young people that are LGBTQ plus, aged between 11 and 18, they found that 52% of secondary school pupils are twice as likely to feel separated from their peers. 52%. What is that number? It's outrageous. Outrageous. And then LGBT Hero conducted a survey during lockdown of young adults aged 18 to 24 and 25 to 34-year-olds. And they reported that they felt the risk of homelessness during lockdown due to family rejection or lack of support networks. LGBT Foundation did research, and their research found that 65 plus year olds, 28% reported discrimination and lack of services. So charities like Out Together, Just Like Us, LGBT Hero, and the LGBT Foundation have highlighted the fact that so many LGBTQ plus people lack support services still. And not all LGBTQ plus people, and I'm talking about the older generations here, can get access to online spaces either, which is why it's equally important to have community spaces, community hubs in which people feel like they are able to connect with other people in real life, not just through a screen, which can sometimes feel a little impersonal anyway. So the fact that Out Together have digital inclusion services and help older generations have access to online support with people from their own community, think about the impact that that has and how incredible that is. But of course, I'm going to be sharing more on Out Together online. Make sure that you get in touch with me on Instagram at Life with Jemma Blythe. That is now the home of Blythe Coffee Break on Instagram. And as well as always, if you have any information for me that could go into next week's hot sip, please email me, Life with Jemma Blythe. I will leave that on the screen now. And also, you can find Out Together on Instagram too. And I will leave their Instagram linked in the description below as well, so you can find them as well. I cannot recommend them enough. And I am so thrilled that they've allowed me to work with them on this podcast too. So thank you so much, Out Together. Now, this week's myth drop. I am carrying on with the ancient traditions of chosen families. And if there's one thing that queer people have done really well, is that they've always built community in seemingly unconventional ways. And long before the term chosen family existed, mythology was full of stories about outsiders creating their own tribes and their own followers. And I'm going to talk to you about the ancient Greek god of wine, winemaking, orchards, and fertility. And of course, he was a patron of theatre as well. I'm talking about Dionysus, whose followers broke down societal norms and weren't afraid to show their wild side when it came down to drowning out the patriarchy. Dionysus traveled with followers who existed outside of societal norms, and he was often seen as the only god with a mortal parent. Sound a little bit familiar? Sound like he might be an outsider too? You're absolutely right. And while I was doing my research, that struck a chord with me. How often do people in queer communities choose their own family and their own people to surround themselves with? I know that I've done that, and it's been tricky, so tricky. But there's been so many that have done that, and it exists like this. It's like a chosen family and a way of saying, come in, we understand you, I understand you, and there's no judgment here. And it just shows you that that has been going on for years and years and years and years, right into mythology times with Dionysus. I just find that so fascinating. As a little bit of a Greek nerd, when it comes to mythology, I love it. Love it. So again, if you have anything like mythology that you're interested in, anything like that, drop them down in the comments, because I would love to read some of your own mythology stories that you found interesting in the future episodes of Blythe Coffee Break, because yeah, those stories bring people together. Those stories show individuality and trauma in different ways. So good. And it's time for this week's community spill. I need another sip of coffee. So this is where I go through the audience reactions and community stories. And there's something that comes up online on social media. I'm talking about Facebook, TikTok, few others, where, of course, there's LGBT creators. And there's one thing that comes up time and time again. And no, it's not dating. It's friendship. That's not always linked to romance or nightlife. Friendship, just pure and simple. And this again links to Out Together, because there are so many LGBT people that have set up their own initiatives when it comes to local meetups. There's camping trips together, there's festivals, there's lunches at different pubs and restaurants, book groups. There's so much out there. And it's nice to see now that Smaller queer groups are forming in towns and villages. So in the more rural areas where being queer and being a part of the LGBTQ community is still quite isolating. And so it's nice to see that that's branching out a little bit and there are little leaves of people appearing in different places. And that's so nice to see across social media, because a lot of the time we see so much bad on social media that it's good to see social media coming in use for powerful things, building relationships, showing that people can coexist together, which at one time that would have been unheard of, especially in small towns and villages. And as well, it's nice to see support networks of friendship replacing traditional family structures as well. And you always get, there's not always a hierarchy either, which is just amazing to me. And it's pretty incredible. So when you see intergenerational meetups go on, coffee groups, and community hubs that are built up of different people existing together, it's just beautiful. There's no other word for it. It's just beautiful. And I'm going to get quite emotional because I'm not from a place where that exists. And it's so important for that to exist. And that's why I'm doing this podcast for All Together, because we do need more about together in different places. So if you can donate, please do. So now it's time for Blythe's Brew Take. And right now, I think the queer community is going through a quiet shift. For decades? For decades meant visibility, but now it means something else altogether. Belonging. Nightlife isn't always accessible to everybody, from anxiety to other mental health difficulties that are again so common with LGBTQ plus people. Older LGBTQ plus people often lose social networks as well because of their ages and because of different health conditions. So it's so important that those intergenerational connections do exist. And rural queer spaces deserve more attention, especially if they are independent. They deserve so much more attention and love. So it's time for me to grab my crystal ball as we head into a future forecast. And if this trend continues with TV dramas like Smoggy Queens and the soap operas with their LGBTQ plus communities existing outside of London, queer culture might not always be in big cities. It might be small communities, coffee mornings, volunteer groups, intergenerational friendships, the kind of community that organizations like Out Together are already building. So there'll be more queer regional storytelling, documentaries about rural queer life. How amazing would that be? And community-driven LGBTQ plus projects to again cut down the isolation and the loneliness. So with that, thank you very much, Out Together, for allowing me to spout on about Out Together on a Blythe Coffee Break episode and to raise awareness for you and hopefully some money too. Fingers crossed. I am sending so much love to everybody out there at the moment. And if you haven't done so already, drop Blythe Coffee Break a follow, subscribe, and comment. And also, leave that cheeky 5-star review. I know you want to. I'm watching you. And I will see you again next week for another episode.